This video shows how to model the 6 pieces of the Bauhaus chess set from 1924 by Josef Hartwig using 6 separate SolidWorks parts. The pawn of this chess set is a cube with an edge length of 19 mm. To be able to state that value of 19 mm only once and reference it in sketches and features, we are going to use a global variable. Thinking ahead by looking at the other pieces, we can see that the rook is a cube as well, but with an edge length of 29 mm, and the king is a rook with a pawn on top, rotated by 45 degrees. To be able to use the pawn as a starting point for all other pieces, we will create 2 global variables named short edge length and long edge length. Starting with the pawn, we create a new SolidWorks part. To create the 2 global variables, I click on Tools, Equations, and under Global Variables I enter the name, short edge length, and its value, 19 mm, and also the second global variable, long edge length, 29 mm. We can close that dialog now. And if we want to change those values, we now have a little folder here in our feature tree with the equations. We even can click on the disclosure triangle and see those 2 values. To create a sketch with the square that we need for the cube, I first click on top plane as the plane where I want to draw my sketch upon, then on sketch, and I go directly to center rectangle. I want to have the center of the rectangle to coincide with the origin, so I'm watching the relations, and the yellow little square hints me that if I click now, it will coincident. Now I can enter a smart dimension. And since I already have created the variable, when I type the equal sign, I can select the desired variable short edge length. The little sigma ahead of the number tells me that there's a formula used for this dimension. Now I have 2 options: either use the vertical dimension and also add a smart dimension, but I'll use a different way. So I end my dimensioning and click on the horizontal line on top and the vertical, any of the 2 verticals, and click on equal. So this way the length of those 2 lines is equal and my sketch is fully defined, as I can see below here in the text or in the status bar, or even that all of the elements are black now. To create the extrusion, I can go directly to Features, Extruded Boss Base, and the focus is already in the depth of the extrusion, and again I can type the equal sign and select my variable. So I'm already done here, almost. So I have my sketch and my extrusion. I will rename it for better reference base to be able to talk a little bit better for it over it, and assign a material. In this case, maple. I will readjust my view and save the part on the desktop in a new folder that I will create, Bauhaus chess set, and name the part pawn. and save it in the folder. Now I can close that file since I'm finished already here. I open my folder and duplicate that file by using copy and paste and rename it to Rook. That's the next part that we are going to draw. And in SolidWorks, I'm going to open the Rook. Just use the drag and drop here. And now I have to edit my sketch. I right click on the sketch and click on the edit icon, double click on the dimension, and change the used global variable to long edge length. When I close the sketch, I can see that I still have to adjust the height. So I right click on base and also change the variable to long edge length. I mess up a bit. I again readjust my viewport, and I'm finished with the Rook as well. The knight is a bit more. The knight I will base on the Rook, and also I copy and paste it. Rename the copy to knight. Open it in SolidWorks. And now I want to edit the Rook to become the shape of the knight. And since it's a bit different, I have first of all to change the sketch. And when I change the sketch, I will get an error because the sketch will not work as a base as it is currently right now. So we just expect an error. Since the knight is consisting of, for the knight I'm splitting the original square in 4 smaller squares, and here I watch that I really get the midpoint of the line. Click and escape to finish that line and draw a second one. Again, I look out for the midpoint orange icon. And if I close that file now, I will get an error. And it tells me there are open contours because the lines are not resembling a closed contour, and the extrusion doesn't work anymore. So what I recommend here is to remove accidents build anyways and just see the error message and edit the sketch. And I have now the option here, and there's also the focus here, that I have more contours in one sketch now, and I just select those 4 contours, and I just want to have the half of the height here, and the error is gone now. Now I want to have, since this is just the lower part, I will rename it also, and want to create on the same sketch a second extrusion. So I click on the sketch, click on extruded boss base, and looking from the bottom, I will first select the contour as a contour, that one square that it didn't use until now, and the two adjacent ones. But what I also want to do is that the extrusions should not start from the sketch plane, but the top plane of the already existing extrusion. So I select from surface face plane, click on the top, and again use my global variable, long edge length divided by 2. And now, to not get another error, I have to uncheck merge result. To have a quick look at the error, I'll leave it checked and say that I want to finish my extrusion. And the error reads that it's unable to create this feature because it would result in 0 thickness geometry. I just uncheck the merge result, click on OK right now, and I don't get an error. The reason why this error message pops up is because in the very center there is no thickness to the opposite side, and SolidWorks doesn't allow single-bodied parts with 0 wall thickness. So this is are now 2 separate bodies, which I can also see on top here. And I will also rename my second extrusion. So you can also see that both are created on the base of the same sketch. I'll rearrange my orientation again, and I'm finished here already. Again, I'll go to my parts, and based on the rook, I'll draw my bishop. So I copy and paste the rook, rename it to bishop, open it in SolidWorks, and I'm changing the sketch. I want to look on the sketch from the top to have a cleaner view. And what I want to do now, to the 2 diagonals, I want to have offsetted lines. So in the sketch tools, I have offset entities, and here I can select those 2 lines. And I have a few options here. Important here is now to add the dimensions, that I can eventually change them later. Reverse just changes the side of the offset. That doesn't really help. Select chain is not applicable here. Maybe more. We'll see that in another example. But bidirectional is what we want. And the distance is not 10 millimeters, but 4. So I've created 4 offsetted lines based on those 2 diagonals, and now I have a few excess lines that I want to get rid of. To do that, I use the trim entities command. The trim entities command works by clicking anywhere with the mouse, with the left mouse button, and then dragging along those lines that I want to get rid of, and they get cut away until the next boundary, which can be any other line. When I release the mouse, I'm still in the power trim mode and can now click again and trim the inner lines as well. Just have to take care not to trim the diagonals. And then I'm almost finished here, but I can now see that a lot of lines are blue, and also in the status bar I can see that this sketch is underdefined. The reason why this is so right now is that my equal length relation got lost during the trim, and I have to recreate it, clicking on, for instance, those two lengths and say equal length. And because of all the other relations and dimensions and so on, the sketch is fully defined again. I can rebuild and exit the sketch, readjust my view, and have the finished bishop. So I can close the file, go back to my files, and start to draw the queen. I will base it also again on the rook, duplicate it by copy and pasting it, renaming it, and opening it in SolidWorks. The queen is the rook with a sphere on top, and a sphere is a rotational body for SolidWorks, so I have to use the revolved boss base, and this needs an axis and a contour to rotate around that axis. So we need basically half a circle to rotate around an axis. I need a new sketch here now, and I will use the front plane, and I will start with a center line, which is the same thing as a construction line. I'll show you in a second, and it's just named here center line, and I will draw this from the origin upwards and dimension it 52 millimeters. And now I'm going to draw a full circle first, with its topmost point coinciding with the topmost end of the line, and also dimensioning that one. That's 24 millimeters. And now I'm going to trim one half of it. And I cannot use this for a rotation because I just have the arc and it's not closed, so I have to add a line to close that contour. And since this sketch is consisting of a construction line and a contour, I can go directly to revolved boss base. It assumes that the construction line is the axis and the other part is the contour, and that's correct. So I can save my file again and go over to my last piece, the king. I again duplicate the rook. And now I want to basically draw the pawn again on the top surface of the base. So I want to create a sketch on the top first. So I click on that face, create a new sketch, and then from all possibilities I choose the 3-point center rectangle. It's the easiest for me right now. So that's the center point, an edge, and one width. I'm going to change my view again by hitting space and top to have a more clear view. And now I can add a few relations, like this line should be horizontal, the other line vertical, and I can now see already that this is already a square, so I only have to dimension it And I can again use my global variable. So this is the only file where we used both of the variables. So when I go back to my view, I can now see that I want to extrude the top of the knight. So I click on Features, Extruded Boss Base, equal sign, global variables, short edge length. And I'm also finished with the knight. So that's it. That's how you draw the 6 pieces of the Bauhaus chess set.